everyone is doing. It's easy to get lost in a sea of comparison, secret tricks, and promises of overnight success. The long game? That's my approach to business. You gotta show up, you gotta do the work, and there are no quick fixes for long-term success. It takes creativity, it takes strategy, and it takes listening to the voice inside you. I'm a web designer, digital strategist, and energetic thinker, bringing you real-world business-building experiences, conversations with creators who are out there doing it now, and ideas to spark the energy in your own business. And along the way, we're gonna have a little bit of fun as well. So thanks for being here, and let's get to today's episode. You're listening to the Long Game Podcast. I'm your host, Sandra Scaiano. I am so excited to bring you today's episode. My true belief is that you can build a business around whatever it is that drives you. My guest today is Dr. Kristy Sumner, a paranormal investigator, historian, and museum co-founder. Kristy has woven her passion for historic stories and the paranormal to create not one, but two successful businesses: Soul Sisters Paranormal and the historic Scott County Jail Museum. Today we talk about her first overnight stay in a haunted penitentiary, the technical skills she and her team have developed to produce their content and to share these stories wider, and how a new partnership bloomed into a super cool reimagining of a historic location. What I find so amazing about what Kristy has done is that she has built multiple facets into her business, and they all flow seamlessly. Nothing feels extraneous or pushed. And that's a real skill, right? To know what extensions to add and how to bring them to life. And she has done this all organically. Kristy shares her story of how their first YouTube video came about, and it really doesn't get any more organic than this. Today, the long game is Paranormal with Dr. Kristy Sumner. Welcome, everyone. I am so excited for today's guest. We have Kristy Sumner of Soul Sisters Paranormal and the historic Scott County Jail with us today. And we are going to dive into some alternative universes here today. And of course, talk business and how this all came about. So welcome, Kristy.
Thank you, Sandra. I appreciate being here today.
I'm so excited. You know, when you and I met online, one of the things that really drew me to you in your work is like you can build a business around anything. You know, like this is what you love, right? Mm-hmm. Like people come to me sometimes, or you hear online, and they're like, "What should I do?" It's like, do what you want to do. And this is like a great example because your business, it's an alternative industry, paranormal investigation, right? So, tell us how you got into that, first of all, and a little bit of your background.
Sure, absolutely. So my official title is actually Dr. Kristy Sumner. And, I say that not gloatingly, but I say that because my previous life, I was a college professor. I was a senior director for a registered traveler program. My background is actually in biometric identification for airport access control. So I was actually in corporate world, technical corporate world for years. And to your point, it's one of those things that really evolved into doing what I love through paranormal investigations. So my sisters and I, we come from a very research-minded background. We all have advanced degrees, and we would routinely get together and take girls' trips to different cities across the country just to have a weekend where we could all meet up and just be sisters together and do something different.
Totally.
Yeah. So in 2014, we had the opportunity to go to Moundsville, West Virginia, which is where the West Virginia State Penitentiary is located. And we had a family friend that sat on the board of that facility. And he said, while you're here, why don't you just take one of your nights and stay in the penitentiary and see if you can communicate with our spirits. And so we did, and we absolutely loved the experience. And we came away with what we felt was compelling paranormal evidence. We heard footsteps, doors slamming, voices when we knew that there was nobody in those cell blocks. And so what we decided to do is after we left that experience, we really wanted to try to elevate paranormal investigations as best that we could into a more professional situation, because paranormal investigations obviously is something that's a subculture, but we wanted to kind of so we wanted to bring that conversation more into the mainstream.
Yeah, legitimize it too a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So we formed Soul Sisters Paranormal, and we had our theme music created, we had our logo created, we went ahead and got our copyright and our trademark for all of that. So while we are a primarily Soul Sisters is a self-funded business, we act and operate as a profit-making business.
Awesome. So let me ask you, on that first night, on that first stay at the penitentiary, like, how did you prepare yourselves? Like, you were not soul sisters at this point, right? And someone said, why don't
No.
you spend the night? It'll be fun. You'll like spook yourselves, right? Like, so how did you prepare for that? Like that first night, like you didn't have all the equipment, the night vision cameras and the EVP sensing, equipment. Like what was that first night like that sparked everything?
It was a pretty interesting, very, to your point, very rudimentary investigation. We did have some digital cameras and we had voice recorders, just, some voice recorders we picked up at Walmart. And but what we also had was the historical narrative of the jail, of the prison.
Right.
Our grandpa was actually a prison guard there when it was in operation before he became
Oh,
chief of
wow.
police, and so we had that historical background. And we all love history, so we did a deep dive into the research, and just to be in that building was so incredible. And so we did put out those voice recorders. We did take a lot of pictures. We did acquire one night vision camera that first night, a video camera, and so we picked up some very interesting things. Like I said, we left voice recorders in different parts of the building, even though we weren't there. We still had ears on the
Right.
environment there, and so we were picking up footsteps when we knew that there was nobody else there. We were hearing doors slamming, and it really is one of those situations where your other senses become heightened immediately. So because it's all dark, so you're not relying on your sense
Right.
of sight, but your hearing becomes extremely acute, your feelings, your smell becomes very acute. And so that's really what we learned from that first experience. And then after that, every subsequent investigation, it's a learning process, right? Everything that we do is a learning process, because I mean, investigating the St. Augustine Lighthouse is much different than investigating the West Virginia State Penitentiary. So you have to learn and adapt to that environment, but also using techniques that we feel are true paranormal investigation techniques.
And let's go into a little bit that emotional piece of things, because you are not going to happy places, like all of these. There has been, I mean, the Lizzie Borden house, there was like a double murder where they were,
Mhm.
really terribly slayed.
Mhm.
The penitentiary, they're, you know, not to sensationalize, but they're not, they're evil dwellings type of thing. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
In terms of that. So, you're going into these places. You're not finding happy spirits, so to speak, necessary, in that respect. Like what is your mindset for preparing for that? And what have you encountered in that way?
Well, the first thing that we do when we go into an investigation is we really, to your point, prepare ourselves both spiritually and mentally and physically. And by that, I mean, we say a prayer of protection before we go in. Now, everybody in my group, we're Christians, so we say a prayer of protection. And that's really just to, protect ourselves in the environment. And we
Hmm.
really set our expectations as well with both ourselves and the spirits. So we'll go in and we'll say, we are legitimately here to tell your story. If you want to communicate with us in any way, this is how you do it. You're not allowed to hurt us. You're not allowed to touch us. You're not allowed to come home with us, but we want to hear your story. And, a lot of people may say, oh, that's just crazy and nuts. But, for me, I do believe that there is energy that is available to speak to us if we listen. And those spirits want to tell their story. And I think we've gotten some very compelling evidence because of that. So, to your point, when you go into these locations that are dark and more heavy, we don't look for anything that's quote unquote evil. We don't look for anything that's demonic. We legitimately want to tell stories, both the historical narrative of the location and the story of any spirit that wants to communicate with us. And that's really how we prepare for those investigations. As I said before, we do a very deep dive into the historical perspective of the location because we feel that is extremely important. And then we couple that with any paranormal evidence that we find during the night.
And I believe in this energy, so I can only imagine that your intention comes through to the spirit world. You're not
Mhm.
there to disrupt, and I use those other words as like a reference point, but your intention comes through because you're there in a peaceful way and in a historical way rather than a disruptive way. So I'm sure they feel that and respond to that in a rightful way.
Well, thank you for saying that. And when we first started this, obviously there were television shows, Ghost Hunters, Ghost Adventures, and stuff,
Right.
and their main goal is to sensationalize because they need to get an
Right.
audience base. And I completely understand that. If that's how they want to operate and that's what they want to do and showcase, God bless them. But for us, we do not provoke. We do not go in with bravado or any type of sensationalism. What we produce are videos that show again that historical story of the location, how we conduct the investigation, and anything unexplainable that we find. And that's what we want to put out there. Now, it may not be fast paced. It may not be instant for the YouTube crowd or the Instagram or TikTok crowd. But for us, it's really true to how we do the investigations.
Totally. And the videos you create, everyone will be linking to Dr. Kristy's website, Soul Sisters Paranormal. So you can go watch. They have extensive videos on all of the places they've done these investigations. And, you don't even need to bring the sensationalism. Like, it's there when you're going through an old Victorian house and the old door creaks. It just naturally creaks, right? So all those natural pieces, those elements add to the story without big flashes of light or things like that. So, I think you achieve that. And, I'm a history buff myself. And so I really love that, like, ooh, you're telling us a little bit about the area of Falls River, Massachusetts, where Lizzie Borden was, they lived. And what I also thought was interesting, I'll reference that one video, is you told the after story as well.
Mhm.
Like, you didn't just stop at the sensationalism of, we did the investigation here. You went on to talk about they left that house and went to another home and stayed in the area and what happened and like how they were viewed by the community. Like the whole story, it was complete rather than just like, we're stopping at the sensationalism piece.
Well, thank you for saying that. And that to me is important, right? Because a lot of these investigators, they will stop at what causes the quote unquote haunting and not go into that. The Lizzie Borden for me is a very interesting example because, this was a story of a lady who was charged with 2 murders in 1892, and she was acquitted of those murders. Very horrific. But she stayed in the area. And to me, if I've just been acquitted of 2 extremely high profile murders, I'm out of there. But the house that she bought was literally a mile and a half down the road, and she
Right.
stayed there for the rest of her life. And to me, I felt that story needed to be told.
I thought that was so interesting too, because the acquittal came by a group of, 10 men judges. And
Mhm.
I thought it was so interesting because they really in the 1800s got into forensics. They were like, there wasn't blood splattered everywhere for her. Like, I thought that was so interesting that because, we tend to think like, lock her up. Oh, she was there. Like, that was really insightful, I thought, of them to acquit her, whether I don't know whether she did it or not, right? But
Mhm.
I thought that was very interesting because they were not doing it on emotion. They were using forensics to
Mhm.
really make this decision back at that time.
Absolutely. And like I said, I think that's why the story needs to be told. And that's really the case with all of the locations that we go to. We don't want to just stop at this is the investigation. Okay, we're done. Goodbye. We want to continue that story out. What is going on with the location now? What is the future prospects for the location? Or what is the end of the story, like the Lizzie Borden or the Villisca Axe murder house or some of these other like Ma Barker? What was the story? Because it just didn't stop with the event that
Mhm.
happened at the location. And we always feel that that's very important.
Totally. I love that you see it all the way through. So, one of the other pieces to your work is this whole technical aspect. Like,
Mhm.
you and your team needs to have a lot of technical skill. And we'll talk about as, entrepreneurs that we need to be videographers, we need to be copywriters, all of these things. Like, you as well. Not only are you going into these places and doing this historical research, that is an expertise that you have. But you are making videos of the whole thing. You're being videographers. You're using the audio software. So can you tell us a little bit about that journey of like, all right, we've perfected a little bit along the way, or how that came about, like, and really that piece that you needed to develop.
Absolutely, and it is still an evolution, believe me. When we when we first started Soul Sisters, it was never in my mind designed to be anything like it is. We came up, like I said, we came up with a
That's so
cool logo,
cool.
and it
Cool.
really was about getting together with my sisters and my friends and doing something unique. And we knew we'd meet different people along the way, but we never dreamed we'd develop a quote unquote following. The videos really started because I have a very extensive family and they're all over the world. And so they started asking, what was it like? What did you feel? What did you see? How was this? How was that? And so I really just put together the first video to kind of showcase that. And one of my cousins said, well, just put it on YouTube because that's easier for us to get the link. Da, 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 da. So we put it on
Right.
YouTube, right? And it started getting likes and hits and comments. I'm like, okay, well, this is
Wow.
interesting. And
Total organic,
yeah,
right? Like,
absolutely
wow.
organic. Believe me, if I had any thought into where this was going to go, I mean, I do a lot of things that were different, like my logo, right? I've got about 20
Right.
different colors in the logo, and finding screen
And it's a
printing.
skull.
Yeah, it is. But that's something, and just different things that as I look back now, it would be a little bit different. But I'm very proud of how we've evolved into how we've evolved. So the first couple videos that I put together, I mean, I look back at them now and I'm like, oh my gosh, they look like home movies made on VHS. But
Everyone, right? Right.
but you do have to learn the software. You have to learn, the lighting in these locations. I mean, we're completely dark. So we had
Yeah,
to find
that's
some lighting.
fascinating to me. Are
Mhm.
you shooting in like infrared, like night vision cameras? Like,
Most of what we do is night vision. So when we, let me just backtrack just a little bit. So when we first enter a location, the very first thing that we do is we set up our voice recorders in different parts of the building or wherever we're at, and then we set up night vision video cameras. Our idea is that we want eyes and ears on as much of the location as we can, even if we're not in a room. We want eyes and ears in that room, and so all of that is done in night vision, and obviously we have the audio that's there. And so when we walk around and do what we call EVP sessions, we'll have some handheld equipment with us, and then we also all wear body cameras. And that's for two
mhm.
reasons. One, the first is to capture the video of our experience, and the second one is it gives me a timestamp of where everybody is on the location during the night. So if we hear
Oh,
something
cool.
or see some type of anomaly, I'll cross-reference where everybody is to make sure that we didn't cause that. That
Hmm.
somebody didn't hit a chair or sneeze or cough or something like that. That way we can truly say that what we found is unexplainable. And so that's really what I draw the videos from, are a lot of the night visions. And we do take a video with our iPhones. So I'll interject some of those just for a little bit better, clearer reference of where we're at in the location. But a lot of what we do is from the night vision, either the body cameras or the stationary cameras that we have set up.
Wow. So you've had to perfect the shooting aspect. Do you also handle the editing aspect because you are so close to the story, or do you have people that you work with?
I do. My sisters and I,
Wow.
we will all be involved in the research aspect of it, and then so everybody then kind of sends me the clips of the research, and then what we do is when we're done with the investigations, we take all of our audio and all of our video and we sit and listen to it all and watch it all. So if I've got 10 video cameras running for 10 hours, I'm watching 100 hours of footage, and then I'm
Wow.
listening to, 100 hours of audio. And we don't put it through any software. We listen to it as we captured it, because we want to make sure that we're not missing anything. And so it's a pretty tedious process. It usually takes about a month to 2 months, depending on the location, to get all of the evidence or all of the evidence gone through, all the footage watched, all the audio listened to, and then we narrow that down and put that into the video. So that's how we really start the process, and then we'll clip everything, and then I'll take all of that. I'll do the narration based on I mean, I'll write the script, I'll do the
Right. Right.
narration, and then put everything together and then release it.
Wow, it really is a production, and
It
I will
is.
say that you and your team have really fine-tuned your listening skills, because in those videos you'll say, "Listen for the voice," and it'll play, and then you'll say, "We're playing it again," and then you do like an amplified version. And that was the only part I heard when you did the amplified piece, which I really appreciated. But it made me think like, wow, you are all so in tune. If you're sitting here listening to 10 hours of audio from different spots and you've got to pick up on that voice
Mhm.
speaking, which it could just be, so I thought that was really interesting that you have such fine tune, you're tuned into what your work is.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate you saying that. And to your point, it has become, something that we're pretty capable of doing now. It really is. The first thing you've got to have is patience to just sit down and listen to all of this. And most of the
Mm-hmm.
time, like 99.9% of the time, we'll put on our headphones and we're listening. I'll just lay on the couch and read a book or something while I'm listening, and it's mostly just static, just for 100 hours of just. So when something interrupts that, for me, I
Hmm.
can very quickly pick it up. And
Right.
so that's kind of how we've fine tuned that skill. And then what we'll do is, so say I'm listening to this piece of audio, and I hear something, I'll clip it and then I'll send it to the rest of the team and say, do you hear something? I don't tell them what I hear. I don't say, listen for a noise, a sound, a voice. I don't say anything. I say, do you hear something? And then individually they'll send it back to me and like, no, I don't hear anything, or yes, I hear this. And then we'll come up with a consensus. And if we don't all hear it, then I don't put it out there. Now, there may be differences in what we hear. For example, I may hear waterfall and Jenny may hear watermelon. And so we'll just decide, okay, well, we're going to caption it as waterfall. And so
Hmm.
that's kind of subjective on our part, but that's why we say we believe we hear this. Now if you hear something else,
Hmm.
let us know, but as we're listening to it, we believe we hear this.
This whole work is subjective. It's like, right? So it's kind of like, hey, we're coming along on the story with you because none of it is concrete, really.
Hmm,
It's
exactly.
just what you're interpreting things as.
Hmm.
So that's super cool. And it really does give me a new passion for going back through my old work and like transcribing some things when I'm like, as I was listening to your 100 hours per episode, I was like, all right, I can do it.
You can
I
do
can
it,
go
yes.
back and get a couple of pull quotes.
And kind of back to your comment about being subjective, that is kind of the point with this as well. We're not trying to convince anybody of that where we've
Hmm.
gone is haunted. We're not trying to convince anybody that if you don't believe this, you're wrong. What we do is we put together videos that highlight our investigation, and then when we control for everything environmentally that we can control for during these investigations, what we're left with is the unexplainable. And so we'll put it out there and say, we've controlled for everything. This happened. To us, it's unexplainable. If you want to come to us and say, I think it's this, then I want to have that dialogue, because I don't want to put out anything that, for us isn't real or true. And so that's why,
Totally.
we're very meticulous about how we phrase things. Very rarely will I say, oh, this is absolutely haunted. No, we found things in this moment that we can't explain. And that's how we put it out there. It's not trying to get anybody to believe us. Now, if you want to just watch for the historical perspective, fantastic. If you want to watch for the paranormal perspective, again, fantastic. And we appreciate that. But we're not out there trying to convince anybody that what we're saying is concrete proof of the afterlife. To us, it's very compelling and unexplainable.
That's an awesome approach. I want to shift also to you've got another aspect of your business as well that is equally as historical and also has some alternative facets to it as well. And it is the historic Scott County Jail Museum. And so
Mhm.
in this museum, you have obviously taken over a landmark space, created a museum where you have history and objects of crime and punishment. You have an escape room. You have merchandising. You do tours, and you allow people to experience their own paranormal, have their own paranormal experience at the jail.
Mhm.
You've also created a podcast. So let's talk about this facet of your business, this multifaceted approach
Mhm.
on this piece. So, and tell us a little bit too how it evolved, or when after Soul Sisters, and give us a description.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a great example, to your point, of something that was a passion of mine that has evolved into this amazing business and something that I'm proud of, and what I love to do. So we, like I said, we started Soul Sisters in 2014, and about 3.5 years ago, we met up with another paranormal investigator. Her name was Miranda Young, and she has a show called Ghost Biker Explorations. And I followed her show. I think it's fantastic how she puts together her videos and her historical narrative on the locations as well. So I was very impressed with what she did. So I reached out to her and I said, "Hey, congratulations on your season. If you'd ever want to meet up sometime and do a collaboration investigation, I'm all in." And so
So
she.
cool.
Yeah, so she reached back out and said, "Hey, let's do this." And so after about 3 months of emailing back and forth, we met in North Carolina, and we did just she and I, and we did a collaboration investigation, and we became fast friends. And so she is from this area, which is Scott County, Tennessee, and her father unfortunately died a couple of years ago, and then she lost her job due to COVID. And so we were both in a point in our lives where we kind of had the freedom to explore this thing that we really wanted to do together, and that is to open a historical location and couple that with paranormal research. And so she knew that this building, which was it's the historic Scott County Jail, it had been vacant since 2008. And so she knew it was sitting here because she's from the county. And
Right,
she
right.
said, "Why don't we just put together a business plan and go talk to the town council and see if they'll allow us to take over the building?" And so we sat for probably about a month and a half, and we got all of our numbers together. We had tourism numbers. We looked at our outreach plan. We looked at our marketing plan. We came up with merchandising plans. Miranda has a very strong background in graphic design and marketing and management. And so coupling that with my experience in business, it really was a great fit. And so, like I said, when we presented our idea to the mayor and the aldermen, it was one of those where we had every I dotted and every T crossed. I mean, we could tell you the numbers, the outreach numbers that we wanted to attain, with our marketing plan of going out and really doing guerrilla marketing to all of the neighboring communities. And so they allowed us to do it. They were very impressed with our plan. And so then, once we got the go ahead, we really became the entire face of the business. You and I were talking earlier, and we're everything from the janitor to the designers to the display organizers to the marketing, to everything in between. It's just the two of us, and I am extremely proud
Wow.
of what we've accomplished. Now, there was a lot of learning to do. I mean, learning about sales tax pretty much kicked my butt.
Yeah.
So,
And a
stuff like
different
that.
industry of tourism. I mean, you're not just
Mhm.
you're going into something else as well that you have to learn all about.
Absolutely. And our it really is neat because we traveled, both of us individually with our paranormal teams, we've traveled across the country. And so we know what paranormal tourism looks like. We know what, as investigators, we wanted. We wanted
Hmm.
a location that was close to a hotel. We wanted a location that had power, different things like that. And so we were able to take our knowledge as paranormal investigators and our business sense, as well as, what we enjoy as tourists, and really come up with this really unique concept. And one of the things that I looked at for about a year was paranormal tourism, and it is a very, very hot topic right now because people want these unique experiences, especially coming off of
Yeah.
COVID. They don't want to go to Disney World. They want to have
Hmm.
locations where you have this immersive experience with history, and then also after dark experiences. And so we've been able to marry that very well, I believe. And it really is just this great, unique package. I think what we've done, if you look at us just from the outside, it looks like we have a very robust company, but it's really just the two of
Amazing. Yes.
us.
That is one of the things that I commented you on, is that everything really seems to fit. I mean, the logo design, the whole look of everything, even like the the outside the door of the space, with the stain, like it's all done with a particular eye, and every aspect, all the different facets on all the different touch points that you've created for the business, they all really seem to fit. Like nothing seems pushed or as if it doesn't belong. So I want to ask you, in that respect, did you open with, let's say, the museum and the merchandising and tours, and then maybe add the escape room later, or did you open it all at the same time, or did that tourism piece evolve as well?
It gradually evolved to include the escape room, but we knew that when we wanted to open, we couldn't just have the building, even though the building is spectacular, right? I mean, we're sitting in a building that was built in 1904. It was in operation as a jail until 2008. So just the historical perspective of this building is fascinating in and of itself. But we knew that we probably couldn't get a lot of people in that just wanted to look at a building. And
Right.
so we started out, we took about 2 months, and we had all of our graphics done. We obviously both put in a financial stake into this, so we used that to have the graphics done, get our website up and running, get displays in the museum. We created an audio tours so that when you go through, the audio tour is just playing on your
Yeah.
phone if you scan the QR code. And so
That's
we
so
knew
cool.
that when we opened the doors day one, we wanted that experience. So we're still building on all of those things. We're still getting more displays and more items to hang up on the walls and such, newspaper articles and stuff. But we wanted something that when you come in here, you're spending 30 minutes to an hour, depending on how much you want to evolve yourself in this. And that's how we really started. And then we added different things. We had the paranormal part as well. We have a very strong community in the paranormal community. So we knew that once we opened the doors, the paranormal would grab our crowd. And so we relied on that as well. So you can come in, a paranormal group can come in at night and rent the building from 8 at night to 3 in the morning. And so that is a revenue stream that we knew we could get very quickly. And so that's what we capitalized
And
on
you
in
leave them
the
there
beginning.
like no attendance, or are you there as guides for that experience?
Not so much guides, but one of us does sit in our little office room just in case something happens. That's,
Right, totally.
our liability insurance says that we
Yeah,
must. So
totally, totally.
anyway, so you learned about that real quickly too. But so one of us does stay on site. So we're on site, but out of sight. And most locations, paranormal investigators expect that, there's a docent or somebody that kind of sits on site. And it helps that the building is extremely haunted, so
Mhm.
that's a great draw as well. And so
Wow.
that is really our basic revenue stream right now. But to your point, we also started out with a very robust gift shop. So even when the first day we opened, we had T-shirts, we had books, we had different things, because what we also wanted to do is, because this is a community building, we wanted to invite other artisans and craftsmen and authors to participate in our gift shop. And so we have local authors who have written books. We have people who have made soaps. We have people who have made knives and different things that we sell in our gift shop, and really become the face to allow others to say, hey, it's not just us, it's the entire community that's taking part in this building. And so, as I said before, this is something that we sat down and for about a month and a half before we even approached the town, and we had all of this in place. I mean, we knew what the merchandise was going to look like and all of that. And to me, I'm extremely proud of that, because we could have just said, hey, give us the keys, let us try this. But we
Mhm.
wanted to start out with a bang and really show people that we are legitimate in what we're doing. And like I said, it's something that every day I come in here and I'm saying, wow, we built this, and it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and it's clever, and that well thought out plan really comes through. I mean,
Mhm.
nothing looks, like I said, it's all seamless and so artistic and professional. And I also love that whole community aspect of it, because you weren't just doing this for yourselves. You have a bigger mission
Mhm.
of the history, the community, the stories that you're telling and you're weaving in.
Mhm.
Um, and I love that you're giving the experience to other people who don't want that paranormal experience, right? Like,
Right.
you've now used this other piece with the escape room
Yeah.
to families come in and see,
Yep.
hey, can we for those of you who aren't familiar, escape rooms are basically like a riddle and a puzzle that you've got to figure out to get the key to get out of the room, right? And so you
Exactly.
have created a storyline of, you're wrongfully accused of a crime you didn't commit, and other inmates in the jail know who framed you, and there are hidden untraceable clues inside the room for you to follow, and you have 60 minutes to identify your accuser and escape the jail. And I before being like sentenced to life, so there's a big ramification in your imaginary world. But that is cool, because
Mhm.
that brings a family with two teenagers in to
Mhm.
experience this historic venue, maybe to buy a shirt along the way to help your mission. I just think that is a super cool aspect. So you know, it's the two communities that you're now able to cater to.
Yeah, absolutely. And, to your point, to the evolution of the escape room, because this is a 3-story building. Third story is the maximum security level. So you've got the typical bars and all of that, the cell blocks and such upstairs. And so we thought, why not utilize this? Because right now people come in and they just see these cells, right? Why not utilize that as an escape room? And so if you're on the day tour and you walk in, it looks exactly like the jail would have looked if an inmate was in there. So we have towels hanging up and uniforms hanging up and books on the shelves and a pillow and blanket and all of that on the bunks. And but during the night, that becomes the escape room. So all of those items and things in there are part of the clues and the puzzles. And
So
so
cool.
yeah, so it was one of those things. I love escape rooms. I've been doing them for years. So it's like this is a very natural fit. It's a very interesting storyline that we can create using items that you would find in a jail cell or that could be smuggled into a jail cell, and it fits. It's not something that is forced, right? And so that's why I'm very proud of that. It took me about 3 weeks to come up with all of the clues and puzzles. There's, I think,
Wow.
there's about 22 of them that require you you have to solve to get out of the entire cell block. But it's a lot of fun. We had a group here last night. They've never done an escape room before, and they were a blast. And to me, I love it because in the scenario, I'm the jailer or Miranda is the jailer. And so we watch, because we're there, just to watch, make sure they don't have any problems. And I love it. It is to me, it's such a study in personal
Human thought
experiences.
process.
Yeah, exactly. A social study of how people operate. Because I get to see these people, you obviously one becomes a leader, one becomes a follower, one becomes the problem solver. And I love it. I can sit and watch this all day. And so to me, that's just personally gratifying. But to your point, it's one of those things that has evolved to include some different things here that the community can enjoy and partake in.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. I love that evolution piece and how you've built things that relate to one another so that you aren't, even though it's you and Miranda there and you and your sisters over here, and you're still able to make everything work without complete overwhelm, right? I'm sure that you overlap each other in both businesses so that you being the common denominator in both can still be in both without feeling overwhelmed. And
Absolutely.
you've created this as your sole, like now this is your income. This is your lifestyle, that you're able to do what you love.
I have moved to Tennessee. Yes.
And you moved to Tennessee. So tell us too, whereabouts in Tennessee is Scott County? So if people wanted to tag this onto a trip somewhere to Nashville along the way, like how does that all work?
So we're in East Tennessee, so Northeast Tennessee, really. So we're about an hour west of Knoxville.
Right on.
It's a pretty straight shot right up I-75. There's an exit for Scott County and Huntsville. So it is a very rural town, but it has, you can get to things easily. Somerset, Kentucky is about a 45-minute hour drive north of us. Nashville, I think, is about 2.5 hours, 3 hours to the west of us. Chattanooga is about 2 hours.
Your road trip, and you can plan to go through. That's
Absolutely.
something for sure.
Yeah, like I said, it's about 15 minutes right off I-75.
Nice. Well, of course, we are going to have links to all of your items, your websites, both websites, Soul Sisters, Paranormal, and the historic Scott County Jail, so people can find out. And the podcast. Like, I want to talk about the podcast before we go too, because you've created this video podcast. When did that come into the piece as well?
That was something, again, that we had planned to do. And so it's called the Jailhouse Informant. And so it's really a mixture of true crime, some interesting facts about Scott County, and some different things like that. We've got, I think, 6 episodes. We did have to take a little bit of a hiatus this last couple of months, just because we were working on getting some different tours established. But we do have our next guest lined up, so we will be starting that back up again here probably within the next 2 weeks, and then we'll just have guests lined up, after that. But it's something that Miranda and I, we've always been fascinated with. She has her own podcast with Ghost Biker Explorations, so it's something that she was very familiar with. I've been guest on numerous podcasts, so we knew we wanted to have that aspect for people who really couldn't get here, but still wanted to be kind of involved in what we were doing. So again, that was always on the plan as something to do. And we really do enjoy it because we've gotten to meet a lot of interesting people.
Totally. And that's a way to broaden as well, because you're not only sharing your story, you're sharing other true crime stories from across the country, or different investigators and people who come on. So super cool. So we will also link to the podcast. There's really a lot of great information, and, congratulations to you for
Thank you.
pulling it all together and doing it in just a succinct way with style. I mean, that's really what comes across. It's professional. There is a good momentum behind everything that you do, and you've really achieved something with that. So congratulations.
Thank you. Really appreciate that.
And thank you so much for being here, Dr. Kristy Sumner, and of Soul Sisters Paranormal and the historic Scott County Jail. We'll have links to everything in the show notes. So thank you all, and we'll see you next week. Thanks for joining me today. You can access more information, links mentioned in this episode, and the show notes at thelonggamepodcast.net. If today's show connected with you in some way, please share it with your friends or hop on and leave a review. Both of these make a really big difference. All right, until next time, keep playing the long game.